health awareness, just to name a few.
At the head of these efforts in our state, Governor Gretchen Whitmer, who I sat down with a couple hours ago to get a better handle on our rebound moving forward. Governor Gretchen Whitmer, nice enough to join us today. Just this afternoon, the big news, of course, you announced that restrictions being lifted in retail and some restaurants in regions specifically 6 and 8. For people who don't know, that's the greater Traverse City area, as well as the UP, effective this Friday, in fact, just in time for a holiday weekend. That is great news indeed. But let's talk about the playbook they're going to be using to stay safe, especially because we can expect some of those to be in play in our state eventually as well.
That's right. Well, it's really important that we get this right. And that's why we are looking at this like a dial instead of a switch. We have to re-engage where it's safe to do so. And we have to do so in a safe way. You know, today we had the chairman and CEO of Dow talk about the protocols that they have in their workspace. We had the mayor of Traverse City talk about how they don't want people to all descend on Traverse City. We need to turn this dial. And so everyone needs to, continue to keep their wits about them, continue to do their part, wear your mask, but we are going to start to re-engage. And our ability to take that next step depends on everyone still doing their part so that this one shows we can take the next one safely.
Yeah, that is good news indeed for sure. Now, this is a rebound show, so a lot of people interested in the resources helping them rebound available to them through the Michigan Bridges website. Talk about maybe, if you could, some of the key takeaways from those resources for people actively looking to utilize some of those resources, if you could.
Yes, I know you're going to be answering a lot of people's questions, and I think that it's really important that people know the Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity is working incredibly hard with the Unemployment Insurance Agency to make sure that as resources, are requested, that they come out, that they get out quickly. And so we've really streamlined the application process. We have quintupled the number of people working there. We know that there still are some people who haven't gotten all the resources that they need in this moment, but if you're eligible, you're going to get them, and we're going to continue working our tails off until we get to every single person.
Governor Whitmer, for a lot of Michiganders, there is a real focus and concern when it comes to our seniors and veterans as well. What should people know about the Area Agency on Aging and the MIVET, or MIVET, if you will?
Well, it's really important that all of these different agencies are connected and we're working together to make sure that we're meeting the needs of our most vulnerable. And of course, anyone over 60 is uniquely vulnerable. Our veterans and veterans homes, as congregate care facilities are as well. And that's why we're taking this so seriously, working with a variety of agencies, from the Health and Human Services Department to the LEO to keep people safe, to Lara, who licenses, and to our veterans services, so that we are making a priority of keeping people safe in this moment. It's hard to be isolated, and if you are a person who's got a medical vulnerability, or you are an older adult, you are uniquely vulnerable to this virus, and that's why all of these different agencies are working so closely together to meet needs.
And lastly, Governor Whitmer, we hear a lot about contact tracing. A big focus on the fight moving forward will be that indeed contact tracing. Tell us about the state's resources in the eventual fight to contain the virus when it comes to contact tracing.
Yeah, so we've got thousands of people that are now signed up to help with the contact tracing. This is really important. So COVID-19 being a novel virus means that there's no cure and there's no vaccine. And until there is one, we have to really be, in a position where we can do robust testing across our state to identify how prevalent COVID-19 is. But once you have a positive test, we also need to be able to contact trace every person, every place that COVID-19 positive patient had been. We need to be able to ferret out who all could be in danger so that we isolate the right people and not have to go into a broader lockdown. And that's why the contact tracing is really important. So if you have been tested, or someone in your life has been, and you get a phone call from an unknown number, answer it. Answer those calls. I know it's annoying to answer your phone every time it rings, but I encourage you to do so, because our ability to avoid second wave, our ability to avoid a second stay home, stay safe order, is being able to gather the information so we know how prevalent it is, and so that we can isolate where we need to. And that's going to be really important. And contact tracing is a critical component of that. Until we have a vaccine, testing and tracing and isolation are the most important tools that we have.
All right, Governor, some good advice need. We appreciate you joining us tonight on a Rebound special. Thanks again for your time.
Thank you. Take care and stay safe.
We do.
Well, a big part of Michigan's rebound will include what plays out in Washington, D.C.
Coming up next, we sit down with Congressman Bill Huizenga about stimulus funding decisions that are being made right now and what we can expect when it comes to rebound help as we move forward.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Well, a key part to Michigan's rebound will be what kind of federal financial assistance is being provided, not to mention when and where it's going.
So we spoke with Congressman Bill Huizenga today to get his pulse on what's already been established and where we go from here. Congressman Bill Huizenga, kind enough to join us tonight. First and foremost, before we look forward, let's look back. You had a nice little video Friday as you were leaving D.C. Pretty adamant about what you thought of the next proposal from the House on about a $3 trillion stimulus or relief package, what you didn't like in it. Let's talk about what you specifically didn't like, why it will not pass, and what you would like to see perhaps in the next stimulus package.
Yeah, as you could tell watching that video from Friday evening, I was a little frustrated, and I was frustrated because first and foremost, it was a partisan written bill. And up until this point, we have been working on a very good bipartisan manner. You know, we did our first COVID relief bill voting happened March 6th. And it was $8.2 billion, which seems like a rounding error at this point. But that first $8.2 billion happened right at the beginning of March. And every step along the way, it had been a bipartisan effort. Well, that went right out the window, and I would contend it's because the speaker needed to satisfy the more radical left wing of her party, and that's where they went with a lot of this stuff. You know, funding for Planned Parenthood. You know, we've got small businesses in Michigan that haven't gotten their PPP funding. Yet we're going to open that up and fund Planned Parenthood. National Endowment for the Arts and the Humanities. You know, billions of dollars towards the post office, all without a direct connection into COVID. And so it really became sort of that pet project and pet policy grab bag that really frustrated me. And we've already spent $2.9 trillion. And we don't know all the positive or negative effects of that yet, because not all the money has even gotten out the door. So my point is that we may be coming back for another tranche of funding in some different areas, but we haven't even seen the effects of what the current almost $3 trillion of spending has brought us. So that's where I'd like to see us go next, is assessing the effects, both positive and negatives, of the spending that we have had. And then let's develop what that next step is going to be together.
Sure. You mentioned a couple of things that you said you were working on bipartisan-wise, maybe some debt concerns for both sides of the aisle. And you also talked about maybe in your version of the HEROES Act, maybe a 3-month tax holiday for first responders. Some of the things you're kicking around right now that maybe we can look forward to possibly?
Yeah, my version of the HEROES Act, which I introduced at the beginning of April, is modeled on what we do with our men and women in uniform when they go into a combat situation. Is we suspend collecting their federal income tax. So it's an automatic, instant boost to their bottom line. And what I wanted to do, and still would like to do, is do that for those first responders and those working in hospitals, and not just the healthcare professionals themselves, but those folks that are working in these healthcare facilities that are taking care of our elderly, that are cleaning up after an operation or after a treatment. And I think those people do deserve that. So my version of the HEROES Act, helping emergency responders overcome emergency situations, was a little more narrowly focused. I don't want to create another fund that is going to be administered by a Washington, D.C. bureaucrat who's going to be taking applications in to figure out whether you qualify or not qualify. That to me is not very efficient. I think my version of the HEROES Act gets to those frontline workers. And then I also have something that we call the Patriot Bonus, which is private sector companies giving additional pay to their workers right now as a reward for working in this crisis, and they get a 50% tax credit for that. So whether it's a $2 an hour bump in pay, or whether it's a weekly bonus, I know there's some manufacturers that are doing that, or whether it's a one-time bonus, I want to help incentivize those companies to do that for their employees.
Well, for many, the idea of employment has changed. And for some, that means exploring what's out there job-wise at home.
They want to know what you bring to the table and why you're here for the future.
Yeah, some key steps to take when finding and landing that new job still to come.
I can. I can.
Well, there is no doubt the unemployment statistics are staggering.
So we spoke with a career coach for a look at the best ways of landing a job in these unprecedented times.
Rachel Azier just graduated from Grand Valley State with a double major in English and writing and is hoping to work in publishing.
I had an awesome internship with the Grand Rapids Magazine. So I'm kind of looking at two different spheres here, more the publishing side or journalism.
Like so many other Michiganders right now, she is not working.
I worked at Dairy Queen in high school, and they've reached out to me and said I could come back, which is strange. But yeah, right now I'm still trying to hold out hope for that career job.
But for the millions of Americans worried about their next round of bills, the key to landing a job right now, according to a career coach, Fran Barrick, is understanding your strengths and talents.
This is regardless whether it's career launch when you're 22 or career transition when you're 40 or 50. You have to really identify what the key marketable skills you have, as well as your innate strengths.
Barrick says then do an analysis of who needs those strengths and properly communicate them in a forward-looking manner.
People don't want to know what you did 10 years ago, 15 years ago, especially if you're in career transition. And they want to know what you bring to the table and why you're here for the future. If you can't communicate that in a compelling manner, you really are at a disadvantage.
If a job in your career field isn't available right now, Barrick says taking a so-called lesser job is all about your mindset.
In the end, the only person stopping you in those kind of situations is you and perhaps your ego. If you need, to produce an income, you have to decide what's realistic for you right now and grab a hold of it.
And in the meantime, volunteering or improving your skill set through a local organization like Michigan Works can go a long way.
It doesn't have to be expensive, and employers don't care where you got the skills as long as you have them.
Rachel making a few extra bucks right now while expanding her resume, freelancing.
So I made a logo for myself. I made a little post on my hometown South Lyons Facebook page. They're like what's happening in the town page. And I just said, if anyone needs a website, if anyone needs a logo or anything like that. And so I've had a couple of successes from there.
Spearmint Coaching research shows only 20% of job applicants get an interview. So once you see an opening that excites you, make your first impression count.
I don't want to rock anybody's world, but on resumes, people are spending less than 90 seconds on your resume, right? Can you imagine how much time they're spending on your cover letter? My number one rule is that the cover letter should not cover anything that's available on the resume.
Barrick says start the cover letter by addressing the company's needs specifically, explaining to them how you've done what they're hiring for.
The second paragraph can talk about your understanding of the company.
Perhaps how your brand aligns with their brand values. And then lastly,
you can ask for an interview, look forward to meeting them in person, continuing this discussion, but really short and sweet, three tight paragraphs tops.
And while it can be scary right now, Fran says if you block out the noise and the daunting statistics, your focus will become more clear.
I really do believe deep in my heart is that where there's crisis is also opportunity. And the most important thing is to stay flexible and positive about what the change may bring.
I hope to be somewhere in Michigan working at a job that's paying me to write, that I can finally use these skills that I graduated with. And really right now, I'm so excited for the change, something to start happening. I'm excited for a position that I know is out there somewhere.
Now, Fran also reminds us that it's important to send out a quick 1 or 2 line follow-up email after an interview within 24 hours, essentially thanking them for the opportunity, of course, keeping you on top of their mind as well. When it comes to networking, don't forget about those what she calls warm contacts, people you know at a company, because some businesses actually offer, as you may have heard, referral incentives to employees who bring in talent to their company, so they in turn would have a monetary incentive for helping you out and finding a job. Good advice. And joining us right now live is career coach Fran Barrick, the founder of SpearmintCoaching.com. Hi, Fran. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, Derek. Thanks so much for having me. Great to be in Michigan with you.
So fantastic. Now let's start with a story left off, kind of a job interview. We know personality certainly can go a long way in differentiating you from another candidate, but how hard can it be right now to get across that personality in this new video teleconferencing form?
The simple answer is it's not hard at all. It is absolutely possible to communicate your personality through Zoom or Skype or the employer's preferred virtual platform of choice. You have to dress your space and yourself for your best professional conversation. You have to make sure your message is heard with the basics. Make sure you have a solid line, a good connection, good lighting. Check that you're against a neutral, minimally decorated background that doesn't compete with your message. You may be very proud of your rock memorabilia or your sports, but there's no guarantee that the person sitting on the other side of the desk feels the same way. We just don't want anything that distracts from the most important part of the conversation, which are your carefully crafted interview questions, your answers.
Indeed. I mean, you got a nice little framed picture behind you, but it's not distracting. It certainly makes a lot of sense. Professional, but not distracting. Now, salary, certainly important. A lot of people worried about making ends meet right now. But how do you go about bringing up salary and maybe some of those perks and benefits among this process?
Right. The subject of salary, and that includes vacation, benefits, comp, should be brought up by the interviewer when they wish to bring it up. While it's not appropriate for this to be part of your interview questions, it's absolutely key that you discover what your market value is up front before you have that very first conversation. And there are tools online, Derek, to do this, whether you're looking at Glassdoor or salary.com to get an idea of what comparable pay is for your line of work. You should know that going into the very first conversation before an employer ever makes an offer. If an employer does insist on asking the question before they're ready, if they're sensing you out, my stock responses are to sort of bounce it back to them and to ask, well, what are you thinking about, to get them to make the first offer, or perhaps. I'm sure that, we're both fair and interested parties. I'm sure that we could arrange, come to a mutually agreeable conclusion. If indeed they press, and I do know circumstances where this has happened, I always suggest that candidates understand what their parameters are. They're the bottom that they would accept and the highest, dream number that they would wish for.
Right. And lastly, Fran, some people may be intimidated by some of the recent tech skills that are really more important than ever now. What can we say to them to make them feel a little better or get them some help down the road?
Well, first I have to say I feel your concern. We're all Zooming and Skyping, and it can be very overwhelming, and that's for regardless of your age bracket. But the great news is there are some very user-friendly online tools to get you acquainted with whatever tech skills that you find you need. If you're a visual learner, there are YouTube videos for it, for almost every platform. I think the key is, as you mentioned in our discussion earlier, is figuring out, as assigning what those key skills are that you're missing, that skill gap for the target market you're going for. Is it Hootsuite if you're in social media marketing? Is it a group chat platform like Asana or Slack? Or is it just the office basics like Excel and PowerPoint? The key is figuring out which resources you need the most and then unpacking them one at a time. You don't have to do it all. Nobody needs to know them all.
Right, and one of the good resources is Fran's website, spearmintcoaching.com. Fran, we appreciate you joining us today. A lot of good insight for us. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Derek. My pleasure.
Some great advice there, but this transition isn't just for the workers out there, it's also big for employers.
Let your employees know what you're doing, when you're going to open, what you hope they'll be prepared to do, what you intend in terms of pre-screening and social distancing.
What's required of them to keep workers safe, and what you need to know about your rights when you go back.
This is my first time here. Is this a mic check 1, 2, 3?
Yeah, how many minutes for my story? Five minutes? Okay. Okay. Sure, Josh, can you hear me okay?
Well, as Michiganders head back to work, thousands will notice their job sites look a lot different.
Temperature stations, mandatory masks, and social distancing are all required under an executive order signed by Governor Whitmer. Fox 17's Ryan Cummings is here to explain some of the changes employees will notice and what they can do if companies are not following the rules.
Guys, businesses, employees, and lawyers all agree this is going to be a learning curve for everyone because we are in uncharted territory, and there's going to be a lot of questions to be worked out.
The fears of, am I going to go to work and just get it on me or bring it in on my clothes and have her catch it?
Forrest Hulleberger works for a polishing company. When he's not in the warehouse, he's out driving truck.
But I'm going to so many different facilities, that I'm having a lot of contact with people.
He's not so much worried about himself. It's his wife, Eileen. The two met in elementary school and have been married now for 39 years.
It's the fear of going back too early and then maybe causing her to pass or something from a disease that she's not even fighting right now.
Eileen is going through chemo, currently fighting stage 4 breast cancer.
When I'm out, I wear the gloves, I wear a mask. I go out, I come home, throw my clothes in the laundry, sanitizer. But yeah, I'm scared also.
And a lot of families are wondering if they'll bring home a deadly virus while caring for someone with a compromised immune system.
That's going to be an evolving issue. This is the first time that we've had to confront it in such a dramatic way.
John Walsh is president and CEO of the Michigan Manufacturers Association, an organization that supports nearly 1,800 members across the state. Some of their workers have already told me that they are scared to go back.
Ryan, those issues are going to have to be worked out over time. They can't all be defined from the get-go. But again, going back to the point that I made about the importance of talent, it's going to be in the employer's best interest to work closely with their employees to make sure that they're comfortable when they return to work.
To make sure they're comfortable, the MMA put out this document. It includes pre-screening recommendations, social distancing, hygiene and disinfection, personal protective equipment, and communication.
There's no shortage of communication. Let your employees know what you're doing, when you're going to open, what you hope they'll be prepared to do, what you intend in terms of pre-screening and social distancing, the rules, what the personnel policies will be moving forward, emails, Zoom phone calls, pamphlets at the workspace, every way possible to get the word out.
Under a recent executive order signed by Governor Whitmer, facilities must conduct daily entry screenings. Those include questionnaires and possible temperature checks, have dedicated entry points, and suspend non-essential visits, including tours. They also need to train workers on COVID transmission, teaching them the signs and symptoms of the virus, how to report if they test positive, and how to use PPE. Employers have to require face masks when the workers cannot social distance and also consider face shields for similar situations. Businesses have to disinfect high-touch surfaces like parts, products, and shared equipment. An executive order also states that employers cannot punish workers who have to stay home because they're sick or taking care of someone who's sick. And companies are also required to send people home if they've potentially been exposed to somebody who has tested positive in the facility, something that Steelcase has already had to do. The global furniture manufacturer has more than 1,700 employees in Grand Rapids. Some have a harder time of social distancing.
And when we can't achieve it at all, we're doing face shields and masks, and we're asking all employees in manufacturing to wear masks wall to wall when they come in the facility.
Global Health and Safety Manager Tim Martin told Fox 17 the company has been proactive as an essential business. It's trying to minimize things that people have to touch. The company's already removed some doors and set up temperature checks.
We've set a temperature of 100 degrees Fahrenheit. If you're above that or near, we're asking you to go home. And then we've also partnered with Spectrum Health. They have a COVID-19 symptom checker. And if employees, we were asking employees to use that symptom checker before they even come to work. And if they answer yes to any of those questions, we just ask them to inform our leadership or HR and just stay home.
Elizabeth Welch is a labor attorney.
If they are recalled and decline to return, they essentially will no longer be eligible for unemployment unless they have a good reason.
So basically, you cannot just be afraid and not return. Under new federal guidelines, workers have an extra 80 hours of sick leave on top of what their employers already provide. You get up to 80 hours at regular pay if you cannot work because you're quarantined by a local government or doctor, or you have symptoms of COVID-19 and are seeking medical treatment. Or you'll get up to 80 hours at 2/3 pay if you have to care for somebody who's quarantined or a child under 18 whose daycare or childcare provider is closed because of the virus. There are some exceptions, so double check the rules if you're curious about that extra sick leave.
Because they're starting to find that they can provide, and employees are educating too. They're saying, wait, I thought I get paid sick leave. And the Department of Labor has started enforcing. Just last week, there was some cases where they've come down on some employers who didn't provide the leave.
It will no doubt be a learning curve for everyone. People are ready to get back to work and normal life, even if they're a little scared, like Forrest.
Oh, yes, I love my job. I love the people I work with. I definitely want to go back to work, but I don't want to risk my wife's life to do it.
And we have posted the COVID-19 resource guide from the Michigan Manufacturers Association, as well as a Get Back to Work Safely guide from the Small Business Association of Michigan. Those are all on our website right now at fox17online.com. And now we are joined by Brad Glazier, a labor lawyer here in Grand Rapids, who will try and answer some of your questions that you have already submitted about returning to work. Brad, thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Ryan.
So I'm going to start with a question from Allison. She says that she has multiple health issues that put her in the high-risk population for serious complications if she is infected with COVID-19. She's currently furloughed, so if she's called back before an effective and adequate testing is in place, what are her options other than choosing to keep her job or saving her life?
Well, the first thing that she should do is talk to her doctor and secure a note from the doctor that says that she is immunocompromised and or is concerned about COVID-19 and present that information to the employer.
Okay, and Gail is kind of under a similar situation. She has COPD. She's worried about wearing the face masks that are required. She says she was already told that she would have to. So what are the exemptions for people like her with medical conditions, and what do they have to do or show to prove that they qualify for that exemption?
Well, similar to the last caller, she should go to her doctor and see if the doctor concurs that she's unable to wear a mask. Another thing that she should probably look at are the different types of masks that are available. So the paper masks that surgeons wear use an electrostatic system as opposed to trying to block the airflow. And so she may be able to find a mask that would work for her. If she can't, she should try to get a doctor to provide notice to the employer of her inability to wear a mask.
Okay, a question from Stacy Lynn. She wanted to know something about employees, like some of them who are working for the state who are exempt from the extra 80 hours of sick time. So what happens when their families get sick or they don't have daycare? Do they have options too?
They do. Their options are more limited. So the 80 hours of sick time is available for employees who work for employers with fewer than 500 employees. And so if you're working for a large company, that 80 hours of sick leave may not be available to you. But if you qualify under the traditional Family and Medical Leave Act, which applies if you have been working for a year, and if you're working for an employer that has more than 50 employees at one location, then you could get leave under that act, and that lasts up to 12 weeks.
And as our lawyer said earlier, that 80 hours is extra in addition to what your employer currently offers, right?
Yes, that is money that's available from the federal government. And the way it works is that the employer would get reimbursed for those 80 hours. Many employers don't know about the availability of that program. And so you can help yourself and help your employer by providing a link to the Department of Labor site so that they know that that option is available for them.
Okay. Sherry wants to know that if she does go back to work and she gets COVID, will her company be forced to pay all of the hospital bills? Because at home she's protected with her masks and gloves, and now that she's back to work, everybody seems to be touching everything.
Well, that depends. If she is entitled to group health insurance through her employer, then yes, she would get coverage for whatever testing or whatever treatment is needed for COVID-19. If her employer does not provide for health care, then the testing for COVID is free. However, the hospital could charge her for the costs associated with the treatment that she received. So She's going to want to look at the possibility of Medicaid, and she's going to want to talk with a hospital early on to make sure that there's a process in place and programs in place so that her healthcare costs will be covered.
Okay. Kevin also wants to know, he works in a factory and says that there is very little done about cleaning there. His facility uses a lot of shared hand tools, and he's concerned about that and getting COVID. So what are his rights besides filing a formal complaint with the state if things are dirty or not kept up?
Well, fortunately, there is lots of guidance that is coming out just in the past couple of days that is going to require employers to provide a environment for employees that's safe and COVID-free. And so the best advice that I would have for him is to become educated. Take a look at the latest order that was issued by the governor today, and there was another order issued last week with regard to manufacturing facilities and the things that they have to do. If you find that the employer is not following those regulations and rules, if they're state rules, contact the state, and you can also contact OSHA, which is a federal agency, and report any problems that you see.
Okay, thank you so much, Brad Glazier, a labor lawyer here in Grand Rapids. Thank you so much for joining us for this town hall tonight.
Hey, you're very welcome. Thanks for having me.
No problem. And there will no doubt, of course, be a lot of questions from workers to employers as they head back. That's why the Michigan Occupational Safety and Health Administration, or MIOSHA, has created a new hotline. You can call 855-SAFE-C19. That's 855-723-3219. All of this information is available right now at fox17online.com. Guys, back to you.
And thank you for that, Ryan. A lot of good stuff. Nearly everything we do on a daily basis is changing, and now more than ever, important to take stock of our mental health.
People could be having thoughts of, this thing is never going to go away. My life is never going to get back to the way it was.
Just one of the many thoughts, but there is help available. We'll talk resources and guidance when we return.
Okay, awesome. Yep. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I can hear the commercial.
Well, May is Mental Health Month, and now more than ever, people being faced with challenges like they have never had to deal with before. The stress is on everyone, from adults to teens. Even young children can create the perfect storm to impact our mental health.
So let me ask you this. When is the last time you really asked yourself or someone you love how they're feeling? When's the last time you did a mental health check? Well, tonight we want to equip you with the knowledge and tools needed to start those conversations in your own home so you can feel empowered to take care of yourself and loved ones as we move forward.
Danielle Dykheis is a mom of 2 teenagers and an 8th grader.
Remote schooling has been very difficult for especially my autistic senior.
Like many families right now, they're trying to adjust as best they can.
My daughter would normally spend almost every weekend at her best friend's house for a sleepover, and this is really hard for her.
And just to add more to her plate, Danielle was brave enough to speak out about her mental health journey in the hopes of reaching someone who might really need to hear it.
I didn't know anything about mental health at the time. I didn't know anything about that other people struggled like me, or that these were things that a lot of people struggled with.
Back in 2007, Danielle was diagnosed with major depressive disorder, anxiety, and PTSD. She's faced a lot over the past 13 years, including several inpatient stays.
I really felt really suicidal, and we talked to Pine Rest and decided that it was best for me to go inpatient at the time and get support. It was difficult at first. I still struggled with the shame, and I still struggle with shame.
But through opening up and finding help, she's been able to build a stable foundation that has even carried her and her family through these times.
So it's been difficult, but I think because of what we've been through in the past, they've been able to be supportive and be able to be stronger than if they hadn't been through what they've already been through.
In these tough times and during this pandemic, we've got to really face the fact that everybody is facing mental health challenges right now. And so a mental health challenge is the challenge on how I'm thinking, how I'm acting, and how I'm feeling.
And right now, many people are being challenged.
So one of the biggest risk factors for a mental health disorder can be ongoing stress and stressful life situations. And so this is reality right now.
Economic distress, lack of human interaction, our daily lives turned upside down.
People could be having thoughts of, this thing is never going to go away. My life is never going to get back to the way it was. My situation with the economy and my monies are never going to go away. I might as well take my life. I mean, there are those thoughts and feelings that may be ruminating in people's heads. And that's not uncommon to feel that way at all right now. And that's why we can't be afraid to ask more questions.
And start the conversations in your own home about mental health.
Not feeling guilty for feeling this way, because a lot of times that shame, guilt, those feelings can keep us from talking about it. And that's what stigma is, feeling I'm alone and feeling like I can't tell anybody. So open conversations with our kids, with our family members. And the conversation might start with, you're not alone. I'm feeling it too.
But how do you know when it becomes something more, especially right now?
So I can notice the typical behaviors when they're doing well, but suddenly now I'm noticing the difference. And this is where it's going on for 2 weeks or longer, a marked change in their behavior.
It's about equipping yourself with the knowledge that creates the confidence to take action.
Sometimes it might be, simply put, putting something back into my life that I haven't had in my life for a while. So maybe it's gardening, maybe it's just getting outside for a walk. And those are things that I've been not able to even get up and do. So do I have some coping skills in my back pocket?
There's nothing wrong with you for having a mental illness or being anxious or being depressed or having gone through trauma. All you need is some support.
There's hope and there's resiliency in all of us. There is, and I truly believe that. But it is going to take us to find it within ourselves, or me to be that person that is going to be the person to find that in someone else.
It gave me so much more strength in myself, and I just want to be able to give that to others.
Well, Christy Buck joining us now from the Mental Health Foundation of West Michigan. Thanks so much for your time this evening.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so real quick, I want to get into the pledge that you guys have from the Be Nice campaign and how people right after this can start those conversations in their home.
I would love for folks to go on and take the pledge, and it literally takes 12 minutes. And it's a 4-step action plan to save a life. And the plan is to notice, invite, challenge, and empower. And so the first step is one of the most important steps, because we do often notice changes in someone's behavior, something that's not typical of how they usually are. And with that, if I do notice these changes, if I see the sadness, if I see more isolation, if I see someone's typical behavior not being the way that they normally are, then I want to invite myself to have a conversation, the I. invite myself to tell them what I am noticing in them. Following that, I want to challenge them. It might be to get treatment. It might be to make a phone call to someone to get some type of help and assistance. It may be challenging them to find something positive in their lives to do. And that was what I was talking about in the interview. Find some coping skills, challenge that person. And then most of all, the last step is empowerment. And empowerment comes through possibly me helping and supporting them through this journey that they're on right now. Or it could be they themselves empowering themselves to do something, to get treatment, to get help, to instill protective factors. Protective factors are those things that I can go to that will help me through when I'm being challenged by a mental health disorder.
And let's talk resources, the many out there right now, the Don't Go Out, Reach Out services that are available. And also with that question, I want to ask, so often when we do these stories, people say, mental health isn't covered. That's not something that's covered by my insurance. It's too expensive. So if you can address both of those things real quickly.
So one thing, it can be covered, and sometimes we don't even know. So if you do have private insurance, you need to make a phone call and ask them. 2, many employers have programs, they're called employee assistance programs. And it is a benefit offered through many employers where you get 6 free visits with a clinician. So find out if your employer offers this and also ask them what resources they may have. If you do not have insurance or it's Medicaid, you need to go through Network 180. And all of these services are all through the Don't Go Out, Reach Out. So if you have any questions right now, you can also make a phone call. Pine Rest, Forest View Hospital, and Network 180, start a conversation with someone. So many times it's just like any typical thing where I might be afraid or embarrassed or ashamed, and I won't go make the call. Make the call, make the initial reach out. And if you are concerned about a loved one, you pick up the phone and make the call. Also, there are crisis situations where somebody might be thinking or talking about suicide. At that point, a call needs to be made. And there's a national prevention helpline, 1-800-273-8255, or texting help to 741-741. Please do not let someone go untreated if you don't know the answers, if it's covered by insurance or if they can or can't afford it. Help is there.
Thank you so much, Christy. Such an important topic. Appreciate all of that. We'll get all of those numbers and resources posted on our website, fox17online.com. And again, we encourage you to take that pledge, start that conversation in your homes. Thanks, Christy.
Thanks, ladies. Good stuff. Indeed. For a lot of people, the focus remains, meanwhile, in finances and getting bills paid.
Whatever it costs you to live for 1 month, multiply by 3, that's your emergency fund. So that takes priority over extra investing.
And we were talking ways to save and prioritize your spending when we return tonight.
Okay, I'm unmuted. Can you hear me? All right. Mic check. Hello, hello. I'm talking to Aaron. Is that correct?
Mic check, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Well, families are no doubt feeling the economic impact of the coronavirus and the sudden issues in making ends meet.
Aaron Parsesian joining us now with a look at how some are making sure those bills are paid. Aaron.
Yeah, Derek, Deanna, right now people thinking about money more than ever and are changing their spending habits. So we spoke with an expert to see where those changes should be made and how that can be beneficial in the long run.
In recent weeks, a lot of families across West Michigan have experienced a sudden change in income.
Our family income has pretty drastically been reduced right now. So between layoff and then also just a reduction in hours as well for my husband.
Stephanie Martin, a married mother of 3, is one of many in Kent County dealing with that now unfortunately familiar scenario.
When we started seeing the cut in pay, we immediately had to just reevaluate our budget. We already do budget in the first place, but had to go through it again and just really reevaluate what's important, what's not important.
Martin and her husband took a proactive approach, immediately cutting out things like subscription services and the amount of times they were getting takeout. Some cuts were made naturally given the current climate. By being home, they're saving a lot on what they normally spent on childcare and gym subscriptions. As a whole, they are making sure everything they purchase is essential.
I guess we're just really selective on what we do choose to spend on. In general, we're not spending a lot of money right now. So it's really interesting to look at our, credit card statement and realize how little you spend when you don't need to.
They also made changes to their retirement plan.
We looked at 401k contributions and decided to put those on hold. So we're not contributing anything to that right now. I feel like there's a time to prepare for the future, like many decades down the road. And there's a time where you just have to focus on the here and now and being able to just help your family.
It's a good decision. It's not ideal in a vacuum, but we're not in a vacuum. We're living real life with real pain. And so that decision they made a lot of sense. The key will be when they get reemployed, hopefully soon, that they restart those contributions without too much delay.
Pete the Planner Dunn is a personal finance expert. Dunn says every situation is of course different, but typically people can find themselves in 3 categories.
But ultimately, there's 3 groups of people that are trying to make these decisions. People who have already been greatly impacted, people who might be impacted and don't have savings, and then people who are unlikely to be impacted and have savings.
If you are greatly impacted, Dunn says you need to focus on spending on the essentials. And only the essentials.
I think food is the first priority, not in terms of extravagant food, but the idea of sustenance, that you can nourish your body. I think rent is obviously very important, or a mortgage payment is very important beyond that. Do not try to get out of debt, meaning if you've got consumer debt that you were paying down aggressively, just pay minimum payments right now. There's zero reason to lessen your debt burden right now, because if you have extra money, that money should be saved, especially because we don't know when or what happens at the end of the enhanced unemployment benefit come July.
But what if you are still employed and find yourself actually saving more than you normally do? It's time to start building stability.
I think the first point of stability for most people, if they want to get serious about being stable, is a 3-month emergency fund. That is to say, whatever it costs you to live for 1 month, multiply by 3, that's your emergency fund. So that takes priority over extra investing or something like that. But emergency fund is definitely point number 1.
But his advice, no matter where you fall, is to not put too much pressure on yourself.
Your goal is to survive and be ready to rebuild, because a lot of us have lost in this moment, lost dignity and income and everything in between. And the other idea here is some people who've already won some financial battles in their lives, they may have to refight that battle. So just keep your head and don't put too much pressure on yourself.
Yes, a lot of helpful tips there, but here's a guy with even more info. We're now joined by consumer expert John Matarese, who you may be familiar with his Don't Waste Your Money segments. John, thanks for being here. So let's get right into it. What resources are available for people who want to save more, and how can they avoid scams looking to profit off this pandemic?
Yeah, you got to watch out, Aaron, for some of these scams out there, because it's unbelievable what we've been finding on Facebook, on Instagram. People are looking to buy face masks. They're looking to buy all sorts of protective gear. They're looking for toilet paper. They go onto these sites. They see an ad for face masks. It doesn't arrive, or what arrives is garbage. They pay $50 for something that's worth 50 cents. You have to be so careful. And if you're buying something online as part of your pandemic shopping, just check out the company. A lot of this is coming from other companies. You may not get it. Check the company very carefully.
All right, John, running low on time here, but I want to thank you so much for joining us. We have a lot of your helpful tips on our website, fox17online.com. Thank you again. We're headed back to Derek and Deanna at the desk.
Reminders, okay? Appreciate it, guys. Thank you so very much. Of course, the discussions do not end here. So a lot of questions Michiganders are facing in the weeks and hopefully not months, but possibly months ahead.
Remember, you can join the conversation on our Rebound Facebook page or at fox17online.com. Thank you so much for joining us and have a great night.